Edward John Stecker was born April 11th, 1964. He had an older brother named Charles, born November 8th, 1962. When Eddie was about 18 months, he would get a little sister by the name of Donna. One day, Charles would get taken to the hospital, but would then get put in foster care. Eddie and Donna would then take him to foster care on a different day. However, the three would soon get reunited. On February 16th, 1967, Charles and Eddie were put into a car and put under the foster care of Lillian Bedford, who was born July 20th, 1923. She was married to Francis Driza. They had a daughter together by the name of Francis, who had a twin brother. They were both born in 1944. However, sadly, on July 27th, 1949, Frances would apparently die after 2 days in the hospital, with her cause of death being listed as subdermal hemorrhage. Frances would apparently move out the house, causing the wedding basically to split. She would basically get remarried to Donald in January of 1954. However, she basically claims that her married name Driza was actually her maiden name, because it's believed that she never actually legally divorced from Frank. On April 15th, 1966, a foster child by the name of Brent Garcia basically had died under Lillian's care. He was on Lillian's care for like 4 months. Cause of death was ruled as undetermined, even though there were bruises found on multiple places on his body, and her and Donald were allowed to actually bury Brent themselves. On February 28th, Lillian would hit Eddie with a plastic bowling pin, basically resulting in Eddie falling out of the crib. She basically would try to separate his brother Charles away from him, and this results in Charles actually breaking his arm and apparently permanently having that injury even in his years later on adulthood. Eddie, of course, would be bleeding as a result of basically falling out of this crib. Lillian would try to clean up the room before calling the police, and sadly, Eddie died that night. Charles basically told the police that Lillian had actually hit Eddie as to how he died. So, of course, Lillian is charged with involuntary manslaughter, and assault is held no bond. Her lawyer tries to say that basically Lillian was mentally insane at the time of the murder, and she should be held in an institution instead of prison time. Lillian would actually apparently die in a mental institution, so not serving any jail time for the death of Eddie and Brent and possibly her own daughter Frances. And so Charles would of course have to get long-term rehab due to what she did to his arm as a child. He does eventually get reunited with his mother and Donna. And so as an adult, I assume in Eddie's memory, of course, because that was his brother, he would basically create the Child Abuse Prevention Task Force, basically found that, and then also the Charlie Angel Foundation.